Welcome and good evening to yet another wonderful session organized for you from the School of Media Arts and Design, APU. It's been a wonderful series of sessions that I've been able to provide to you, and this week is going to be extra special because this session today that we have brought to you is pertaining to visual effects, and we have got a very interesting person to actually share his experience as from a VFX artist onto how he has become into a director. So that is a small gist about the session that we have in whole for you today. Again, I'd like to thank all of us who are joining in today. There's been a very good registration count, and slowly I can see that there's a watch count is increasing. Wonderful to see that. I would like to share a few things before we actually get into the session. First, this session is going to be an interview session where the co-host and the resource person are going to share, do it in style as like an interview format. So we would like to open the question answer session right in the beginning of the session itself. So if you have any questions that you want to ask during the session, you can post it right away. Unlike the previous webinars, we usually ask you to post your questions during the towards the end of the session. So now today we are open to take questions during the session itself. So please feel free to actually post your questions on the comment section, and we'll be glad to answer it as we proceed with the session. Yes, so on that note, I would like to present to you our co-host for the day. I'd like to bring in Mr. Hussein Khan. Hello, Guru.
Hi, Edwin. Thanks for having me, man. Nice to see you again after a long while.
Yes, it's quite a long while. We live closer, we work closer, but this pandemic has actually kept us far away. And nice to see you again after a long time. And thank you very much for obliging to be the co-host for today. It's a pleasure for the School of Media Arts and Design, APU.
And the pleasure's all mine, man.
I like to, if I have to brief you on the achievements of Mr. Hussein Khan, it's going to be a big list. So I'm going to be very, very crisp and short. Hussein Khan is the CEO and master trainer at VFX CO, which is his own company where he's a academician, he's a trainer, as well as an industry person. So that is it's the strength of Mr. Hussein Khan. And if I have to give you more details, EFXCO is Southeast Asia's first certified new training center and an Adobe authorized training center. So he it's his brainchild. He runs this training center. HK has been the industrial advisory panel member for the School of Media Arts and Design, APU, from the day in which we actually started our school year. So he has been a guide, he has been a mentor, he has been curating our syllabus, and at this juncture, I'd like to thank HK for the wonderful support you have been providing to APU at large. He holds a FX PhD in Nuke. He's a Unity certified associate trainer, Adobe educational trainer, and also Adobe certified expert in motion graphics and visual effects. I've just listed a very, very few of his certification. And one more important thing, he's a certified pilot as well. Yeah, so he's a certified pilot as well. So yeah, so he's everything. He's into everything. And for me, especially Mr. Hussein Khan is my guru because under him only I got my Nuke certification done. So happy again, Mr. Hussein Khan, for being with us today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Edwin. Thanks for the awesome introduction.
I was very, very humble, and I did not share much about you. Yeah. Now, moving on to the most important person for this session, Mr. Hasraf HaZ Dulull. Before I actually we actually see him on screen, I like to play a show reel of this. Okay, so in a bit, let me share the screen. So that is a short showreel of Hasraf HaZ Dulull. So I'm equally excited, just like Hussein Khan, to actually being able to actually bring us into the screen here for you guys. So here we go. Hello, Az.
Hi. It's been ages. Hey, guys. It's been like 5 years, right?
Nice, very, 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 very nice to see you, and thank you very much, Has. It's been quite a long since we met in person, and now this virtual world has actually collected us. And thank you very much for obliging to actually do this show for us. I am 100% sure that this is going to be very, very interesting and knowledgeable for all of us and the participants who are joining us today. So thank you very much, Has.
My pleasure. I'm super happy to be here. I'm really excited about this.
Wonderful. So I'd like to share one interesting thing. Let me share. There you go. So,
wow.
So this is 2015 Hussein Khan. So it's a wonderful memory for all of us. When we actually had a golden opportunity of us traveling down to Malaysia, and we had that converted into another opportunity where we actually got an offer to do a portion of the proof of concept, the beyond, in our APU, Asia Pacific University school itself. So the students and the lecturers were involved in the session, and again, this is a wonderful experience for us and us. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. This will be there forever. This experience that we had.
Look how young we were as well. 5 years ago.
5 years ago, and now after 5 years. You have done a lot of movies, you have done a lot of stuff, and we are excited to listen from you. On that note, I would like to leave Hussein Khan to actually lead us to take us through his journey from VFX to a director. Okay, so I would meet you towards the end of the session.
Cool.
Over to you guys.
Amazing.
Right. Thank you, Edwin. All right. Hey. So how are you? How's it going, man?
I'm good. You know, in the crazy world we're in today, you can only stay positive and creative. So very fortunate that we are in a creative industry where there's a lot of positiveness, which is nice.
Yeah, great. So before I start asking you questions and doing a bit of a catching up with you, I'd like to bring the audience into a perspective of what's going on here. You know, how did we meet? How did we get APU involved? I know Edwin showed a picture just now. Maybe I can just probably explain to the audience of how our friendship has gone on for a while now. Okay, yeah. Okay, guys, those who are watching, my name is Hussein, and firstly, I'd like to thank APU, for especially Mr. Edwin, for organizing this online event. For those who are not familiar with me or Has, there's a bit of a backstory that I want to explain first. Back in April 2015, 16, if I'm not sure now, I had the opportunity to invite Has to Malaysia for a VFX production workshop, which after which I asked some universities around if they wanted to host Has to come and give a talk to the students. And APU said yes. Of all the universities, APU said yes. So at this time, little did I know that Has was working secretly on a pre-production for his debut feature film, The Beyond. So he said, "Hey Hussein, would you want to get involved in my movie? Would you like to do some visual effects stuff?" I said, "Oh, of course, I would love to do that." And since he was around, he said, "Why not I shoot some footage in Malaysia? You know, just because it's a kind of international kind of movie, right? When you see the movie, you know." So he said, "Why not just go to APU and shoot some footage?" So that's what we did, and then we got some students from APU involved as well at the same time. And you guys saw the picture earlier. So the rest is history. So 5 years has gone by, right? We have not met for the 5 years. Physically, we have not met, although we were, talking to each other on WhatsApp and all that good stuff. So I understand that you've been working on some very interesting projects recently. Although, only recently, about 3 months ago, we had this pandemic of COVID-19, but yet your projects were still going on. So I'm intrigued and I'm interested to know, what were you working on, technology that you've been using? And, you mentioned a few things to me the other day. Perhaps I can probably ask you a little later of how, what are you working on at the moment and how are you doing it all by yourself in your house or something like that. Okay.
I mean,
so
but before we jump into that, just want to follow up on our friendship story, because I think it's quite interesting. Because one of the examples I'm going to talk about filmmaking, filmmaking is a collaboration. That's one thing you should always remember. You have your directors, you have your producers, but at the end of the day, it's a collaboration. And for me, thanks again for you guys and APU inviting me over to Malaysia back in 2015. But being there, my talk was only for 1 hour, 2 hours, and I had like the rest of the day. So I'm like, well, I'm in the university. I've got Hussein Khan. I've got these amazing students. Some of them are from the drama department. Some of them are from the film department. I'm like, I'm making a movie. It's a global movie. I'm in Malaysia. Seize the opportunity. And let me share my screen, because I think there's some stuff that may be cool to show. Let me share my screen. Okay. So this morning I thought, let me just bring up some light. Can you guys see this? You see this, Hussein?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Hi,
you got to share your screen. The option there.
Got it. A little button to share. Got it.
Yeah.
There we go. So
go.
I found some of these behind the scenes images, and let's show you here. There you go. And I don't know what these students are up to. I follow a lot of them on Instagram, and I see they're doing really well. But this kind of just shows you the extent of the collaboration, where there was no ego. There's no, you couldn't tell who's in charge or anything. And it's really nice to be able to have that, where students can come around, be involved in the process. And I felt like when I was growing up, when I was at school and I wanted to make films, I never had the opportunity to be involved in a project and be this close to filmmakers and be part of something, no matter how big or small. And so it's kind of like a proud moment for me in that film, to be able to to shoot this and then to be able to see the results. So actually, Edwin, if you play the clip from the film, it will show everyone what the results of that day shoot was like. So it'll come up in a minute, the clip. There we go. Yeah, I mean, it's a tiny clip, but yeah.
People all over the world are reporting strange activities in the skies. Civilians from New York, Australia and Asia are reporting what can only be described as a terrifying distortion of clouds.
I think they're doing some kind of project. Maybe they're testing some new weather machine. It was pulsating, like with light, kind of. It's just like you could see the clouds moving. It's really scary.
Oops. So there you go. I mean, for something that was a very small shoot, as you can see in the final picture, it feels like a big moment. And that's really cool, because like all the students got their names on the credits. This is a movie that was a commercial hit. It was like #2 in the iTunes charts. It was on Netflix around the world. So for me, it's nice to be able to when I was that kid, I wanted to have the opportunity. So for me to do that for these, it was really great. And again, it's the opportunity that came on the time. It wasn't anything planned. It was like, let's just do this. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love making films, because you meet great people, you have great opportunities. I mean, I would never have known to be shooting in Malaysia. I mean, I've had people call me and go, how did you get the budget to shoot in Malaysia and travel the world? I'm like, well, it's filmmaking. It's about being smart with your resources. So yeah, I wanted to share that. So yeah.
Great. Excellent. So again, for people who are watching us, watching this, the event or the webinar, you may put in questions into the chat. So we'll pick it up as we go along. There's there's no questions from you guys, I will probably look at my questions that was prepared to ask Has. So we'll get the flow running, get a good flow running until the end of the show. All right. So in a brief manner, Has, how did you get into the world of film, especially visual effects, and what was your educational background? How did you start off with all this stuff?
Sure, no, absolutely. Well, I had a family that were very strict, so you can imagine like being in college and saying, hey, I want to like do something creative, and your parents would be like, well, there's no money and job in this. Are you sure you want to be an artist? So what I did was in college, I did computer science and I did art and technology. That was my compromise with my parents. And they're like, okay, he's doing computer science. He'll get a good job. It's fine. He'll be a programmer somewhere. What they didn't know at the time was I was sneakily developing a video game. So I was mixing C++ code and Visual Basic and early 3D rendering and 2D to make a video game. And I ended up going to university, and I did a course called Media Communication at City University in London. And my final year dissertation was I had a 1-year work experience placement at a games company called Davis Studios in central London. And from there, what I was doing was I wasn't really making video games as such. I was doing what you call the cinematics, the cutscenes, right? So, before a game loads, you see the story. And so that was kind of like me making movies, but on PlayStation 1. I'll give you an example. If you guys look, this gives you an example of the kind of games I was working on. I mean, yeah, it kind of shows my age as well. But we're talking PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, GameCube, PC. But, I was very fortunate to work on those type of games because it allowed me to really become the filmmaker I am today, which is play with 3D software. Back then, there wasn't compositor, lighting, 3D modeler, artist. Basically, back then, it was like one small studio. If you could animate, great, you animate. If you can composite, do it all. So a lot of my independent guerrilla filming came from working on PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games, especially back then when your textures were like this tiny. We're talking 64 pixels by 64, and you had to tile them to make something look cool. Whereas today you have 4K textures, 8K textures, subsurface scattering, stuff that we would dream of doing back then. So it was a really good grounded way of me getting in there. But I didn't want to work in video games. I really wanted to work in film. So this is around 98, 1999, 2000. I started sending my showreel out to various visual effects companies. The Moving Picture Company, Framestore were two of the big ones at the time. And I had all my game cinematics in there. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get a job. I've got some cool car chases, some cool CG, easy. I got rejected. Every single studio rejected me. Like, no, you're not qualified. You're not good. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm doing CGI. And then someone at MPC rang me up and said, listen, we don't usually give feedback. Back then it was very niche, the industry. Like today, it's a huge industry. You have 10 HR people. Whereas like back then, it was like the artist rings you up and tell you, no, you don't have a job. And but what was cool, he was saying, look, if you really want to work in visual effects, try to understand that visual effects is really smoke and mirrors. So it's really about marrying CGI with live action together in order to tell that story. And of course, I came from video games where there was no live action. So what I did was I took 2 more years. I worked for Kuju Entertainment doing Nintendo GameCube cinematics, and I worked for Codemasters doing Colin McRae Rally. But while I was working video games in my spare time, I was getting my video camera, my DV video camera, not digital. This is kind of like small tapes. And I was just filming scenes, like making my own version of the Blade Runner, all my favorite action movies, and really badly compositing the CGI on top of it from video games, just to show that, I can do that. And I sent my showreel back to them, and MPC came back and go, okay, not the most amazing showreel, but it shows that you listen to our feedback. You really want to work in visual effects. So what do you want to do in visual effects? And I'm like, well, I can do everything. They're like, well, visual effects is a bit different. There's departments. Do you want to be a 3D modeler? Do you want to be a texture artist, a shading? Do you want to work in dynamics, particles? Do you want to do compositing? I'm like, I have to pick one? Okay. So I decided, because I wasn't very good at 3D modeling. I was good at lighting and cameras and compositing, but I wasn't really good at 3D modeling. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a compositor. And I'm like, okay, great. You're going to be starting right at the bottom. You're going to be what you call a rotoscope artist. I'm like, wait, what's that? They go, basically, you're going to cut out everything frame by frame. And I end up working on a film called Sweeney Todd and 10,000 BC, the Roland Emmerich film. And I spent a year just in the rotoscope department using something called Shake. So I don't know if any of you guys on here remember Shake. Very good tool. And then I used something called Silhouette. And basically every day I would just be rotoscoping. But, you know, coming from that creative mind, I just don't want to sit there and rotoscope every frame. So I started to think outside the box. Like I was starting to combine keying with roto and mixing it up. And very quickly I rose up to becoming a junior compositor where I was doing simple monitor replacement shots, sky replacement, paint out of rigs. And then I started to become a senior compositor where I'm compositing full shots on TV shows and feature film. And then my big break was in 2008 where a friend of mine was saying, hey, listen, there's a company at Pinewood Studios. So you've all heard of Pinewood, right? The big studio in the UK that makes James Bond, all those big movies. So a friend of mine who worked in video games but he went into film said, hey, look, they're looking for someone that knows 3D as well as composite, but also someone's a bit creative. I can't tell you what the film is, but I think you'll be a good fit from a creative point of view. We were coming for an interview. So I'm like, yeah, sure. So I come over, had an interview with this company called Envisage at the time. They're now called Invisible, but at the time they're called Envisage. And they're saying, look, okay, this is a movie. We can't really tell you what the movie is, but there's a lot of pre-viz involved. And we're going to be doing something called post-viz. Now, obviously today, post-viz is very well used. But back then, post-viz was like, what's that? Post-viz is basically taking pre-viz and the live action plate, putting it together to find the idea and presenting it to the director. That's what post-viz was. Now, remember, guys, this is back 2008 where we're using Shake. The 2K was like, wow, for us. Like today, we're doing 4K and 8K, right? And then I remember joining the first day and they gave me my shots to do. And the first thing I saw on my screen was Batman. I'm like, holy crap, that's the Dark Knight. And so you can imagine I was a nerd, completely nerding out, signed a million NDAs, couldn't tell anyone what I was working on, so hard. But what was great about working for that company and on that project was a lot of my filmmaking skills came from there. You know, working in pre-viz and post-viz, you need to know about lenses. You need to understand about cinematography. You need to understand about what makes a shot good to tell that story, understand how to break a script down in order to communicate that. But most importantly, you need to work very fast. This is pre-viz. You don't have time to take 10 days to do a perfect animation. So, and what I was doing in Shake was we were using IMAX plates, and I would create, so the sequence I worked on Dark Knight was the scene where Morgan Freeman opens the door and there's all these hundreds of monitors and sonar. Well, there was no design for that. So I had to come up with all these various ideas. And I swear I must have done like 80 versions before they decided, let's go for that shade of blue. But I learned so much. I learned how movies are being made in this technology way. And then flash forward, I then became a visual effects supervisor. And I started working on shows like Planet Dinosaur, America, The Story of Us, ended up being nominated for a Visual Effects Society Award. Now, being a visual effects supervisor was, again, just like previz, visual effects supervisor was another step into me learning about how to make movies. Because now, being a VFX supervisor, I am working very closely with the director. Or on television, I work with the showrunner or the series director or the producers. You know, when on television, the directors shoot their stuff and they go. And then there's like 6 months of editorial. Visual effects continues. So I remember on Planet Dinosaur, and especially America, The Story of Us for History Channel, Discovery, and the BBC, I was in the edit room till 2 a.m. trying to figure out how to tell story using visual effects because there was no director. So I started to understand how the politics work in studios, you know, how decisions are made, how to compromise in order to get your vision, and working with amazing directors as well. I'm learning so much. And also working with directors, you're like, whoa, I'm not going to do that when I become a director. So all of that became my grounding, my film school. So basically, I didn't go to film school. So I'm one of those directors that didn't go to film school. But I can, you know, hand on my heart, I can say, I did go to film schools. I learned being on set. I learned the visual effects where I learned being in dailies and reviewing shots and seeing the feedback and participating and contributing. You know, one of the companies I worked on as a visual effects producer was a company called Prime Focus. And Prime Focus, as we all know, is one of this big, massive Indian company, but they bought loads of companies in the UK. And one of the companies I worked at was bought. And I got to work on some amazing shows like this PBS show called Beyond Earth. I worked on a couple of features. And Prime Focus is a huge company, which meant there's different layers. And again, that experience of working with small companies and big companies is very different. But all of that grounded me for when I became a filmmaker. I was prepared to talk to producers. I already knew what type of feedback I was going to get. But, you know, here's the thing. I was in visual effects, but at the back of my head, I wanted to make movies, right? I want to make movies. I'm like, I need to make a movie. I need to make a movie. So what I ended up doing was I ended up making a bunch of short films and, you know, financed it myself using compositing, you know, like let me show you some images actually. So like one of my first short films I did was this animated film called Fubar, where I had no actors, I had no live action. All I had was compositing, and I used Shape. I used early versions of Nuke, this very early version of Nuke where 2.5D was just coming in. And I took loads of photos of my cat and loads of my miniatures, and I put them together and just to create this kind of motion comic type of short film and released it. Got a lot of support from the Nuke industry and the visual effects industry. And it was a bit of a cult following, but it never got me into Hollywood. I'm like, oh, Hollywood's not knocking on my door. What's going on? And everyone was saying, it's very nice you can make motion comics. It shows that you're creative. But you need to work with actors. You need to shoot live action because, you know, studios are still very, they're still very traditional in terms of storytelling. So, okay, so still working in visual effects, and went up and made a couple of short films. And one of the short films I made was this fake documentary called Project Kronos, where I only had something like, I think I had like 600 pounds or something, and my MacBook laptop and After Effects and a bunch of actors I paid. And I basically, okay, here's the thing. I'm a nerd, right? I'm a full-on nerd. So I read Wired, New Scientist. I read anything I can. And the thing that fascinated me, even as a child, was I love space travel. Yeah, I would always watch the space shuttle launches when I was a kid. You know, I love science fiction films from like the likes of Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick and Ridley Scott. So, but at the same time, my career, I was working in documentaries. So I found a way of marrying my documentary, my love for science fiction, together to create this fake documentary about sending a brain inside of a ball. I know, pretty wacky, huh? Sending a brain inside of a ball out into space. 50 years later, we get a signal back. And in that time, we're able to read the memories of your brain into pictures. And so I released it, and you know, there's some more clips in the film. And these actors had no idea like what they were saying. They're like, this is very technical, we're just gonna say it. But it was very convincing because they didn't know what they were saying, it felt more real. And anyway, I made the short, put it on Vimeo, didn't think much of it. A few days later, the thing went viral, millions of views. I'm getting calls from Hollywood agents, and they're like, what is this film? This looks amazing. Do you have a script for a feature? And I'm like, what? Hang on a sec. I just did a short. Just like, I was expected to make 5 or 6 shorts, go to festivals and win awards, hopefully, just to at least get my foot. But here I was getting all these calls from agents. And I remember thinking, like, what do I do? And I realized the reason I was getting those phone calls is because of timing. I made Project Kronos in 2013. Gosh, that's so long ago, 2013. At that time, you know, Gravity, I think, had come out or was coming out. There was a lot of science fiction. There was a big bubble, a big rise of science fiction. Movies like District 9 with Neil Blomkamp came out. Monsters came out. So there was a big hunger for like Chronicles, hunger for independent science fiction films. And there was me who did this fake documentary, which people on YouTube thought it was real, by the way. Go figure. But a lot of people thought it was real. Did NASA really do that? So the studios end up calling me and they're like, hey, do you have a feature film? I'm like, yeah, sure I do. No, I didn't have a feature film. Of course I didn't. I don't even know what that is. And so I read a book called Save the Cat, which is a book you should all read. It's a very simple book called Save the Cat, and it basically gives you straight up how to write films. I got signed to a manager, Scott Glassgold, and my career from there just became as a filmmaker.
All right, great, man. So there was a long or short question. Great. So you basically covered the first 6 questions that I wanted to ask you. All right. So I'm looking at this. The questions that are popping up on the chat, and I think I've been receiving these questions as well along the time that I've been also teaching visual effects. Most of the people they are asking, like, how do you become a director? And I always say that you have to start from below, right? So what is your take on that? So people asking, how do I become a director of the movie, instead of how do I get into movies first and something? What's your take on that?
Sure. Well, here's the thing. It's a very interesting question, and it's a question that will probably have different answers from whoever you asked. I can only give you the answer based on my experience. And my experience has been where anyone could become a director, directing is really storytelling. If you have a story you want to tell and you go out and you get like your phone and you shoot something and you put it together, you're a director. You're directed a film. You're a storyteller. Now, a lot of people that I've met over the years at universities and film schools, they have this this illusion that the director is the guy that sits on a chair and calls action and all these people are working for him. And yeah, that was probably like that back in the day, Spielberg and stuff. But, today, this is an industry where it's very cutthroat. I mean, it was always cutthroat back in the 50s and 60s. Of course it was. But because we're in a world today where anyone can make a film on their phone and get it on YouTube, the competition is extremely high, right? So, in order to become a director, you need to have a voice. And I don't mean a voice like a voice. I meant a voice in like a style. What makes you stand out as a filmmaker? When someone goes, oh, that's HaZ's style, or that's, Neil Blomkamp's style, or whatever, right? Like with me, I had a style where my style was, I was a sci-fi guy. Now, of course, I love romantic comedies. I love thrillers. I love, all sorts of genres. But I had a style with science fiction, and my style in science fiction was very gritty, grounded. Yeah, there was full of hope. It wasn't dark, and it also played with technology. So I developed that style by doing a lot of short films. Like I did a short film called Iris, right? So I don't know if you guys seen Iris, but Iris I did this straight after doing Project Kronos, and Iris tackles the world of miniature drones, nanotechnology. So here you go. My first short film was Project Kronos, about brain transfers and space exploration. My second short film was about drone technology. And then I end up making another short called Sync, which is about the future of robotics delivering data couriers. Now, if you look at all of those 3 films, there is a pattern, right? There's a pattern and there's a style. And people then call you and say, hey, we want that director who does those films about technology and sci-fi, and he has a certain style. That's when you become a director. To be honest with you guys, I never actually called myself a director until I made my first feature film, The Beyond. Yes, I was directing short films, but for me, you become a director when people say, this is the guy that did that film. So this is why when The Beyond came out, we had a huge following, because people followed my short films and they knew what they were expecting, because that's the director who did those shorts about technology and space exploration and robots and AI. This feature is we know what we're going to get with this feature. We're going to get a 90-minute version of all of those short films. So that's what makes you as a director. Now, there's so many different ways in becoming a director. My way of becoming a director was I made short films. I put them out there and I just kept developing and developing. Some other people become directors by doing work experience at a television company as a runner or an assistant. There are so many ways. I think because we're talking on this webinar and most people here are visual effects, I'm seeing a lot of people that work in previs end up becoming previs supervisors, and then previs supervisors becoming directors, because it's a natural step. You're already making the film on a computer, right? You're already talking the language of cinematography, lenses, focal points, types of shots, compositions. you're doing that already. Now you do it on set. So if you're in visual effects, there's a lot of ways to get into filmmaking, directing. But the short answer is go and make stuff. Don't talk about it. Just go and make it, you know?
Okay, on the note of making stuff, yeah, and I've known you, we've become, you know, friends for a long time now, and I know you started from the bottom, and I want you to share a bit of experience in making film with limited resources, right? Most of your projects when you did earlier was you did on your, you know, After Effects laptop.
Yeah.
So how can you talk more about that and how you started off, and how can we advise the young filmmakers of, you know, using what they have at the moment instead of running out there and buying expensive equipment and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. For sure, absolutely. I mean, it's like I said earlier on, like, you know, you don't need to go and get an Arri Alexa camera or a Red camera to shoot your film. You know, not that I'm doing an advert for Apple here, but these phones are frigging good. Yeah, the footage you get on this is amazing. You hook up a good sound mic onto it, boom, you got yourself some great footage. You know, I think for people, I would give advice is first, you have your story, okay? You don't need to write your script. Just have the idea. What is this idea? I want to have an idea about drones, or I want to create a film about the post-apocalyptic world. Whatever your idea is, everyone has those ideas, right? And then the next thing I do is I look at my resources. What do I have in order to make these films? Okay, so I have access to a camera. Okay, I don't have access to a production designer. Right, so I need to use existing locations. Who do I know has good locations? APU University, you know, all of those sort of places. Just look at what you have. And then you're like, okay, what are my skill sets? What can I do myself before I can bring other people in? So I know I could edit, great. I can do visual effects, like compositing, great. But I know I can't do 3D very well. So I have to make sure that I need to look out for someone that can help me with 3D. Now, here's the thing. When you're putting movies together, like I said before, yes, there is the filmmaker, the independent filmmaker who's pretty much doing a lot of it, him or herself. But you still need people, right? Now, you have to convince people. And that's the big part of your job as a filmmaker, especially when you're starting out in the industry, is you're no one. No one knows who you are, you know? So a lot of it will come from how you pitch yourself. So what I did on Project Kronos was I did a little test sequence. I made a mock-up test sequence of me talking about the camera, and I cut the little sizzle reel. So a sizzle reel is basically clips you take from other films. You put it together and make a fake trailer, right? So I put that together and I used that, and I started reaching out to cinematographers, actors, 3D artists, 3D companies, you know, people like Framestore, and say, hey, look, I don't have a lot of money. This is a short film. It's an idea, proof of concept. What can I get for this amount of money? But more importantly, this is the idea I've got, and I would love to involve you. The more you have to show of your idea, the more people get excited to want to join you and help you. So that's the big thing people need to remember. You can't just go and phone up a visual effects company or some artist. Hey, look, I want to do Jurassic Park on a low budget. Can you just make me some dinosaurs and I need it tomorrow? But it's got to look like T-Rex, okay? From Jurassic. No. Not only is that disrespectful, also you'll get laughed at and no one will ever take you serious. So try to understand what you are asking. Be very humble about it if you can. You know, admit it you don't know. You know, when I've worked in CGI for a very long time when I made Kronos, but I knew I wasn't no way as good as the CG artist friends I had working at Framestore or MPC and places. So I'll just say, hey, listen, guys, here's some mock-up renderings I did in Photoshop. And that's another thing you could do. You know, get Photoshop or get a free paint tool and mock up some images. Go on Google, type in random images like that reflects your idea, and just do something they're called mock-ups, slap comps. Just slap it roughly. Once you start doing that, believe me, you start to see your idea in place. I have a lot of people that come up to me and goes, I have this idea. I just don't know how to visualize it. I need to hire a graphic designer. I need to hire a storyboard artist. Yeah, you do, but not now. Like, you have no money now. Yeah, you're a student or you're breaking out. Get Photoshop, mock something up. You need to be able to convince yourself as a filmmaker what this is going to look like before you go and bring people for help. So once you do that, use Photoshop, do mock-ups or whatever, you start to excite people. You know, part of your job is to always try to convince people that this is going to be good. right? You know, when you're going for like big companies to help you, their reputation are on the line. So, and if they don't know you, or they've never seen your previous work, I mean, it's catch-22, right? You go to a studio, or or you go to artists, go, hey, can you help me in my film? I'm doing a sci-fi film. They're like, what have you done? You're like, well, that's the point. I haven't done anything. I want to do this now, but I need help. So it's catch-22, which is why at this stage, anyone starting out, be as open and transparent with your ideas. Admit it, you don't know how to do this. You need help. These words have got me so far over the years where I say, listen, guys, I have an idea. I can tell the story. I know how to do this, but I need your help to get this CG done. I would love to get you on board to collaborate. Use those words. Don't say, I want you to do this. Unless you're like James Cameron or a big hotshot director. Don't do that. Be very, and people want to help you. You know, over the years, I've made some amazing friends. You know, one of my best friends is Adam Batchelor, the cinematographer who actually shot my first feature film, who's now got a short film that came out yesterday. He's now directing, which is amazing. But he started out where he was a camera guy for corporate companies. He wasn't working in features. And he came up to me and said, hey, look, man, I saw your short film, your Project Kronos, and I saw Iris, and I hear you're doing another one. If you need some help, I would love to help you. So your previous work helps. Now, a lot of people will say, well, you still need money to make your first short. Here's the thing. All you need to do is paint one image, put it online, and say, in development. People will get friggin' excited. People will come up to, hey, what is this image about? I want to know more. That's how you get people. We're in a world today on social media where there is no barriers to exposing yourself and your work. You know, back then, 7 years ago, you had to go through agents or special sites, or you had to pay a submission fee for your film to be in a big festival. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to go to festivals. Festivals are amazing. I love festivals. But there's a lot you can do online. So look at what you have. Look at the team you have. Now, not everyone has access to visual effects artists. Of course not. Yeah, I'm very fortunate I had that. But I never had access to cameras. I never had access to cinematography. I was the visual effects guy. So for me, that was a learning curve. And the way I was able to convince the camera team and cinematographers and actors as well that I was going to do a good job as a director was to say, look, I understand about lenses. I understand how to pull a shot. Here's some rough storyboards. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to show you something now. I am not a storyboard artist. I cannot draw to save my life, okay? So this could ruin my career, but I'm going to show it anyway. I communicate for these things called Hasgrams, okay? And I'll tell you why it's called Hasgrams, but this gives you an idea of my little crappy drawings. There you go. I draw on Post-it notes. So this was for sync. These are the Post-it notes for sync. This is like back in 2014. And I remember like the cinematographer, Adam, productions, like all these people are saying, okay, where's your shot list? I'm like, my shot list? Okay, I need this shot. I want that shot. I go, no, what is it? I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what this looks like. And I don't want to hire a storyboard artist. So what I did was I'm like, it doesn't matter what the drawings look like as long as you communicate it. So you can see there's like really bad anime, bad matchstick men. But you know what? You put it in a sequence, right? Shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, and everyone looks at it. You can see the film play out. This is the Post-it notes on my board with really rough drawings I did in a coffee shop. But that's the point. Your job as a director is to communicate your ideas. It doesn't matter how you communicate it, as long as everyone in your team understands that firstly, you have a vision. Second, you plan. And thirdly, like you understand editorial, you know how to tell a story. And that's a very important thing that, and there you go. Here's an example of this is on Disney's Fast Lane. So this is a television show for Disney, by the way, which we'll talk about later. But they printed out my really rubbish drawings and put them on the board. And these are big Disney executives are looking and go, okay, yeah, we trust him. We know what he's doing. So my point is, like, you know, to answer your question, like, you know, how does one become a director? Not only do you need to make stuff, you need to plan. You need to prep. You need to convince people, communicate people that you know what you're doing, you know the story you're going to tell, but at the same time, you are open for ideas and collaboration. No one's going to take your job title away from you. So be open, and you'll find that people will give you 110% because you're more like that. So that's the process of how I get to like make my first shorts. And you know, the funny thing is, Hussein, even though this is the process I did on my shorts, I still use the same process today. You know, I'm talking on big budget movies, independent budget movies, I'm doing TV shows, and I still use the same process. Nothing has changed.
Cool, man. So the short answer is ask, right? 3-letter word.
After all of that,
okay.
Yeah, ask.
Right. Okay. Could you also share with us your pipeline? I mean, maybe initially when you started, you had a very simple pipeline, but how was that working for you, and how is it now? Or what kind of tools do you have? What kind of tools that you have that it works? You know, you mentioned just now the word plan, right? So how do you plan, and what kind of tools that do you have for all this stuff?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, look, back when I was doing my shorts, there wasn't like we couldn't afford automated tools like Shotgun or F-Track. So we use Google spreadsheets. Yeah, back then there was Google Sheets that was starting to come out. We used Google Sheets. There was a lot of text messaging, iMessaging, I would say. But you know, the spreadsheet for me is the king. Yeah, everything I do, I always have a spreadsheet. And people look at it and go, "Oh, I don't want to look at a spreadsheet." Believe me, as a filmmaker, you just need one spreadsheet with 3 columns saying to do, process, and review. What your shot numbers are, what your description are. Because here's the thing. We may think, oh, we've only got like 10 shots to do. It'll be fine. But until you put those 10 shots in a spreadsheet, break it down, how long is each shot, what your coverage is. So for those of you who don't know what the word coverage is, say you got a shot of me talking to you, right? You have the main camera, your A camera looking at you. You also need another camera here to get my side profile and another camera to get my hands so that when in the edit, I can make it more interesting. That's your coverage. So now your 10 shots. It's not really 10 shots, is it? It's 20 shots with coverage. You don't know that until you put it in the spreadsheet. So use a spreadsheet. And that's what I was using for, when I was doing my short films. I was using spreadsheets. I was using a lot of emails. And then as things develop, I started using things like Evernote. You know, Evernote, and if you guys use Evernote, Evernote is great. It's like a sharing notes tool. And then we started using things like Dropbox, early versions of Dropbox, to share assets and images. And then on the beyond, we use something called Dropbox Paper, which I remember, Hussein, we were both communicating via Dropbox Paper, right? You would send me your shots and I would annotate. And again, you know, I was paying for Dropbox in a way. So for me, I was getting Dropbox Paper for free. So we started using that and it worked for Hussein. But here's the thing. There's not one tool that will work for everyone, right? When you're working in independent films, you're getting people, you can't force people to say, you have to work with this way. You have to like kind of adapt the way they work because they're doing a lot for you. So on my films, like, you know, there's all sorts. There's Google spreadsheets for me, which I will share to other people that needed it. Dropbox for sharing assets, because you can't send big attachments by emails, but also it's more secure. Vimeo was very useful. We use Vimeo Private, so that every time I would do an edit, I would upload it onto Vimeo Private, and then people can watch it. And you know, dude, it makes a big difference when people start to see an early cut. Very early cut. There's a lot of black spaces saying shot to come, action scene to come, temp visual effects. But it doesn't matter because everyone can start to see the film progressing. You know, I hate it when I was a VFX artist, when I used to help other directors do visual effects for their films, and they would never share an edit. I'm like, well, how do I know what my shot is looking like? How do I know where it sits? How can I help you make it what you want? And like, edit's not ready. Edit's not ready. Whereas I didn't want to do that. I want to share my edit early on. And I find that, you know, even on the Beyond Scene, you know, when I was sharing my edit sequence to you, you were like saying, oh, wow, yeah, okay, you got a helicopter here, you know, maybe we can do a wider shot. It's great to have that conversation early during that shot stage. And also it makes people more involved in your project. So tools like, Vimeo played a big part. You know, one of the projects I worked on was a little bit bigger budget, was 47 Ronin, which was the animated for the, I'm going to show you some clips of that actually, or here you go, yeah. So this is 47 Ronin here. So this was an animated motion comic prequel short film, which you can watch online. It's online already. And they released it before 47 Ronin came out. So now you're probably thinking, how did you get to work on 47 Ronin and make an animated prequel short? Well, the simple answer was someone at Universal marketing department saw my short film Fubar and really liked the style. Now, remember earlier on, we were talking about how do you become a director? What is your voice? Well, they've realized that, oh, this director has this really unique style with images and making them feel exciting using 2D images. So Universal reached out to me via a marketing company called DSS. And they said, hey, guys, look, we have a small amount of money. We have this very tight window. We will give you all the images. Can you pitch us what the prequel would be like? And that's what I ended up doing. But here's the thing. I had to share my editing with the editor in Los Angeles. So what we were doing, I was editing in Adobe Premiere. Now, this is back, 2014, where there wasn't the kind of remote workflow that we have today with Adobe. So what we had was, during the day, UK time, I would edit. My edit and all of my library assets were on Dropbox, okay? So I'm working directly off Dropbox, synchronized to my computer, obviously. And then when I finish, I'll save. And then I'll get a text message from the editor going, have you shot the Premiere file? Okay, I'm opening it now, and I'm going to version 4 now. And he will edit, save it. And next morning, I'll say, see Dropbox synchronized. John has updated edit. Great. So already, 2014, we were preparing for the pandemic. No, just kidding. But we were already, preparing remote workflow. So it doesn't really matter what tool you use. To be honest with you, a lot of these tools are very inexpensive. Like I was already paying for Creative Cloud. So I had Premiere, Photoshop already there already. Dropbox I was paying for. Vimeo, I already had a Vimeo account. So, before you go out and spend money to buy a particular tool or a particular new technology, have a look at what you have at the moment. And you'll find that combining what you have will do the job massively. So that was kind of like the workflow I had. For the feature film, obviously, feature films are much bigger. There's a lot more people involved. We had different companies work on them. Obviously, I had me and my small team working on key visual effects shots, but also the sequences with the big robot. That was all done with two companies called Fillmore and Squint Opera. And those two companies are actual visual effects companies. So they use something called F-Track, and one of them used Shotgun. And so you can imagine what my desktop looks like. I've got Google Sheets, Dropbox for me and Hussein. We've got Vimeo, we've got Trello, which is another thing we started using, and we've got Shotgun and F-Track. So there is no one tool that serves it all. You have to kind of work and conform to what people work. Most important thing is, as long as it's efficient and you're doing it fast, if it slows you down, then you need to rethink your workflow. Always remember, the workflow is to make your life easier. It's not supposed to be a hindering chore to do. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So yeah,
great, so that's Edwin is going to put pop up some questions on the screen, which have been asked by our audiences. So perhaps we will look into that now. And I also remember, before we ask the question, I also remember that something that I learned from you was, if you can do something in camera, just do it. I remember you mentioning that. Remember in Hollywood, they will replace the screens with some post effects, and they will put a screen. But you said no, we will shoot the screens right away, kind of thing. So I still remember that you are a person who likes to do everything in camera. That's quite interesting.
There's a story behind that, real quick. I'm glad you brought up. Okay, so when we were making The Beyond, right? This is like middle of 2016. You have this thing when you make feature films. It's a little bit different to making short films. With feature films, you have to show it to the sales company, the executives, and all that. Even though I was the main producer, I still had to get feedback. And one of the things we did was we did this thing called test screening. So I didn't know what test screening was. I'm like, what's a test screening? He goes, basically, a test screening is where you have a small cinema, you invite a few people, random people, different people, like some are journalists, some are filmmakers, some are not filmmakers, some are just your average Joe person. And you put them in a room and they'll watch your film. Very rough cut, by the way. So they're very well aware that, there's still a lot of effects that needs to be done. But in my case, most of the effects were done already. And they watched it. And the feedback we got very positive feedback, which was very good. As a filmmaker, it's very scary to go to test screen because it's your baby and people are ripping it apart. They don't care how long you spent on it. They don't care how much money you had. They're just going to tell you what they see, right? And it was I do test screenings for everything now because I find it's very valuable. It's better to get feedback now than later, because when the film's out, it's too late, right? So we had feedback come in, and we had a lot of feedback. Some of the feedback was silly, like, oh, I don't like her hair color, or I don't like her accent. Those ones you just put aside, That's very subjective. But the common ones, the ones that we had 20, 30 people saying the same thing, was firstly, the film looked too good to be a documentary. We're confused. Are we watching a science fiction thriller? If we are, why is there no big name actors in it? Secondly, if you are going to make a fake documentary, embrace the fact you're making a fake documentary. So the problem I had was, because I came from visual effects, everything was really well rendered. Everything looked really good. And then when you cut to documentary talking heads, it was very jarring. People got confused. So I'm like, oh man, okay, so what do I do? So obviously the first thing I had to do was look at my 400 visual effects shots and try to make them rubbish, make them crap, so that it felt more believable, right? How am I going to do that? You know, I did the maths that even if me and a few people, including you, Hassan, was to go through, we would never get it done. And here's the thing. We had a distributor, Gravitas Ventures, already came on board. So the distributor is the person that sells your film, releases your film. They love the movie. They're like, we love it, man. It looks awesome. The trailer looks amazing. I'm like, yeah, but I've got feedback. Now, I could have just said, fine, release it. Doesn't matter. I'll do it on next. But, you know, I'm the editor on it. How hard can it be for 2 days? Let me try and edit those changes. And it probably is the best decision I made in my career, was to phone up the distributor and say, hey, listen, guys, I want to make some changes to this film. I want to listen to the feedback I'm getting, because it's important. And the distributor was like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to cut some scenes. Like, what are you going to cut? Please don't cut the visual effects scenes. And you got to understand, sales companies love I think most of them don't even understand the story of the film. They just love the big visual effect, the trailer moment. But for me as a filmmaker, I'm not just about making pretty pictures. I want the audience to feel the characters and the story. And that's an education you learn working on a lot of projects. So what I did was I delayed the project for 3 months, but I still had 400 visual effects shots to do. One day I had this great idea. I'm like, I phoned up Adam, my cinematographer, and said, hey, bring the Blackmagic Ursa camera, the 4K camera, and bring some 50mm lens, a 35mm lens, and just bring a 24mm lens as well. Oh, bring a tripod and lots of black sheeting. And he's like, what are we going to do at your house, dude? Like, that's a really strange. I'm like, trust me, there's going to be pizza on tap, man. There'll be lots of food. It'll be great. So Adam came, we pulled my curtain. In this very room here, we pulled my curtain pitch black. I got my Apple iMac Retina screen, and I played all the visual effects back, and I filmed them back into the camera. Right? So I was doing things like out of focus. I was getting the light and flashing the light to get lens flare. I picked up the camera, give it a bit of handheld, very gently. Now, when you take that footage, this is 4K footage. And remember, the screen, the Retina screens now don't have this interlacing like you had back in the day. It's very crisp. It's Retina, right? So now, right. So now when you cut those shots next to the documentary filmmaker, the documentary talking heads, they feel like they're shot with the same camera guy. We did another retest, and everyone's like, wow, amazing visual effects. So there's a magazine called CineFX. You're familiar with CineFX, right?
Yes.
CineFX did a review of the film. And for me as a VFX nerd, I'm sure you can appreciate it, Sin. That to me is like, it's the Oscar for me. I'm like, oh my God, CineFX are going to cover my film. Like, wow. And they wrote this really great article, and you can read it online on CineFX. And the CineFX articles go, these visual effects look so good, it's as if they were shot in camera. And there's me thinking, they were shot in camera. So there you go. That's an example of, like, you have no money to redo reshoots. You have no money to do new visual effects. Sometimes when you are working in a very small box, your best ideas come. The desperation to fix something, you come up with your best idea. Now, if this was a big Marvel project, you're like, fine, we'll bring more visual effects company to redo all the shots. But this is a good education. And and from now, I'd shoot a lot of stuff in camera where I can.
Awesome, man. Okay, let's go to the question. Thanks, As. Dash is asking, visual effects has been used in George Lucas' Star Wars and also Kubrick's 2001, and they use matte paintings, which is part of the VFX that he believes. So are they used today, and how hard are they, or are they still being used for in the movies right now? He's talking about matte paintings.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's not just movies like Star Wars that uses matte paintings. You'll find a lot of simple romantic comedy films. there's a film called Notting Hill that was made many years ago. And I remember, I think it was Framestore, one of the visual effects companies in UK did that. And you look at the visual effects, and there's a lot of matte paintings because they had to paint out things. They had to replace the background. A lot of the time you see two people talking, like next to a window, there's a matte painting behind there. So matte paintings are always being used. But, like I would say like 5 years ago, it was a green screen and you replace it, okay? Back in the day, like George Lucas' first Star Wars days, it was glass painting, right? They'll paint on the glass and they'll shoot various passes in the camera. Visual effects legendary supervisors like Dennis Muren would do things like that on, things like Blade Runner. So, so that's matte painting. But today, matte paintings are still being used, but they're being used slightly different as well. We have these things called LED screens, right? So now you can play back matte paintings and LED screens and play them back. So you can get it all in camera, the way I like to shoot. All in camera, no green screen. But you can take it one step further now. We all know matte paintings are not just one 2D image. It's projected onto geometry, so you get parallax, right? And Lord of the Rings were the first people to kind of pioneer that kind of technique. But today you could use sort of things like real-time rendering and have that playing back on your screen, synchronized with your camera. So there's a place like AR Wall, Augmented Reality Wall, which was used on a TV show called Night Flyers, where they had huge space scenes synchronized with the camera. Because before, when you had green screen or when you had just a normal projection screen, you couldn't move your camera, and you could do this, but you can't do that, right? Because it's a 2D image, it'll do this. Whereas today, you could synchronize your 3D matte painting to your camera and you get the real projection. So that's very exciting. So to answer your question, yes, matte paintings are still being used.
Cool. Right, so next question from Anna D. What would you mark as your big break? The one project that gave you the push you needed?
Oh, that's such a tricky one, man. I love all my projects, I really do. But if I had to pick one, it would be my most passion project, which is The Beyond. Here's the reason why. The Beyond is a movie that I had to make in order to get a career. It was make or break for me, okay? I was in a stage in my career where I had done tons of short films. I was hired by studios to do writing, but I was still working in visual effects. So I needed a project that was going to be my big moment, or it will be the moment where I fail and go, maybe I should rethink my career now. Maybe I shouldn't be a filmmaker. Maybe I should be really good at visual effects, right? So The Beyond has a special place in my heart for that because, dude, I mean, on all of my projects, I work extremely hard. But this one, I poured my blood and sweat, my own money. 80% of it was financed by myself. So I was taking a risk financially on that film. And I think it's one of the best decisions because now, today, whenever I meet studios like Paramount, all the big, massive, even Netflix I met last year, they always look at your first film because your first film is where your true passion comes from. Now, my second film, Origin Unknown, I love the movie. I got to work with the amazing Katie Sackhoff, but that was a more traditional movie, right? We followed, we worked all very hard, but I'd already made a film already, so I didn't have to prove myself too much. So yeah, The Beyond was probably the film that was my breakout film, absolutely.
It was mine too as well, man. It was too as well. Because I still remember working on this tough shot that you gave me with the camera movement and focusing onto the screen. That took weeks to do, man. That really took me weeks. But I learned a lot. I really like to thank you for that. Giving me a chance to work on your movies, and I really learned a lot of stuff as well.
I appreciate it.
All right. Next question, Vinsky Claresta. Okay. For fresh graduates trying to go to the film industry, would you advise us to be a generalist or rather find our niche, focus on our specialization?
Very, very good question, Vinsky. It really depends on who you're applying to. I know a lot of people don't know what they want to do, right? So if you go in as a generalist, you need to make sure you apply for roles that say looking for generalist, right? If you don't, one advice I would say is if you're talking visual effects, for example, don't go in as going to apply for a role for, I don't know, a 3D modeler, but you say, hey, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. No, just going specific. But look, there is no rules here. Like places like MPC, Framestore, and so on, they're very specific on what they're looking for. But if you are a generalist and you're still trying to find what you really are good at, but you can do it all, there are smaller companies, the smaller independent boutique companies that do a lot of the big films, by the way, but they're the boutique companies. They need people like generalists that can do everything. But at the same time, by the time they finish, they realize, you know what, I'm better as a lighter. And then you go and apply as a lighter. But if you already have a speciality, like you know, everyone can do pretty much anything, but there's always that one thing you're very good at. You know, if you realize you're very good at shading and you want to really become the best at shading, then apply for companies that are looking for shaders. And you'll find animation studios, big animation like DreamWorks, Pixar, or any animation studios, not just the big ones. They are more compartmentalized. They need specific people. And also as a freelancer, you remember this is freelance positions. So if you're specialized, you'll find as a freelancer, you're much more targeted. People will come to you for a specific thing as a niche. But if you're a generalist, you know, you'll find that it's a little bit harder to freelance as a niche, as a generalist. You find if you're generous at a company, you stay a little bit longer at that company because you'll find the company want to keep you. They're like, well, we don't need to get rid of this person. Yes, modeling's finished, but this person can go on to lighting because this person can light. So you need to really do your research, look at the visual effects companies out there that are hiring. You'll find there's a pattern. You'll see the way they hire as well. But also, you know, go to these VFX festivals or online to HR. You know, the HR department today is very different to what it was like 10 years ago. Like today, the HR department they're so knowledgeable that you can speak to them and they'll tell you right now, like, what is the best approach. So yeah, you know, you don't need to know what you want to do, but definitely in your portfolio, show your best work. Don't show that you can technically do something.
Right, man. That was what I wanted to ask you next about jobs. You know, sure. For the last decade, jobs for VFX has been a bit tough to get into. But what is your advice for students who are just starting out? Maybe some people from APU, perhaps they are going to finish school soon. And what would you advise them? What would the first step they take to get a job into visual effects or any other content creation jobs that they're probably interested in?
Absolutely. I mean, look, we all know it all comes down to one thing: your show reel. It really is about your show reel. But also, you know, show reels can become very outdated very quickly, right? You know, what you thought was a very cool dynamics simulation in Houdini, like a year ago, today, you have to up that level. So you need to constantly be learning new tools, but don't just learn new tools, but from a technical point of view, have a result at the end of it. So if you're learning a new version of Houdini, for example, and there's a new I don't know, displacement technique or a new particle system in there, water, whatever, make sure there's a result at the end of that learning. And also, you know, you could also label your show reels. I find it's very important to label your show reel properly. I get show reels like every week. And even when I was a visual effects supervisor, when I'm working at companies and I get show reels, I find it very hard sometimes to ask people to come in for an interview because I look at their reel, I'm like, what did you do on that reel? Because you obviously didn't do that entire shot. Or if you did, you know, when was that done? And what was it? So always put a little heading at the bottom of your show reel saying like, you know, development process or R&D. Yeah. So that when people are watching, go, oh, that's his R&D. Okay. And then look at final shots and say, you know, this is a shot where I did the lighting, I did the comp. You know, you need, if you're lucky, you can create a lot of these shots yourself, but try and find ways of finding projects that are looking at music videos, short films. Try to get involved in those projects because it's important to not only show you can use the software, but it's important to show that you can work on a production. It doesn't need to be a big production. It can be a short film. It still counts as a production. But also, again, just like I said, being a director, you need to have your voice. Being a VFX artist, you need to have your voice as well, which is like, yes, you may be a generalist, but you got a good eye for color, or you got a good eye for lighting, or your technical breakdown was really good. I'm looking for a good TD. Could you help? And then, you know, one of the advice I always tell people is come in for an interview for a compositor role, right? Get your foot in there. And then afterwards, depending on how it's going, say, listen, by the way, I love compositing, but just want to share with you also, while I'm here, I can also do this, this, and that. So I feel like these skills could complement me as a compositor. For example, I can take particles into Nuke and do a lot of that in Nuke as a compositor. I can take a matte painting, I can project it on geometry to do that and own that shot. If you talk in a process kind of way, you'll get hired almost instantly because they're like, okay, there's less risk here because we're looking for someone like that. So yeah, it really is dependent.
For you, for you, just in 1 or 2 words, 80% of the time, what do you work with? What tool do you work in?
What, in visual effects or filmmaking?
In visual effects.
Are you serious? I would say After Effects. I would use After Effects a lot. Reason why is because a lot of the times I'm trying to fix things. that happens. Also, I find with After Effects there's a 3D element to it. So I can bring in some geometry. I can do a lot of stuff affordably. Now I could do that in Nuke as well, but I don't want to buy a license in Nuke just to do a test shot, right? When I've already got a data description.
Yeah. Okay, I've been saving the best for last. Let's talk about. Where did my question go? Let's talk about Battlesuit.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking this is because of late, if you have followed some of the directors like Jon Favreau, they've been experimenting with things like virtual studios, right? Mm-hmm. And I think some of the students, some of the audience have probably seen how Mandalorian was done.
Yeah.
And I saw a picture of you holding a camera as well like that, and you were directing. Okay, so let's talk about that. This is one stuff that excites me at the moment. Using Unity Engine, using Unreal Engine 5 to do visual effects stuff, not games, but visual effects stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let me show you what I've been doing. So let me see. Can you guys see that? All right. Is my screen okay? All right. So basically, a little quick thing. So last year, I was it was a bit of a dead year for me as a filmmaker because, I was doing a lot of development. Having released my movies and done a TV show for Disney, in 2018. 2019, last year, was all development, right? And that's part of filmmaking. You got to remember, you're not always going to jump from one film to another. Films take a while to make before you go on to set and shoot. But, I got a little bit depressed. I'm like, I need to make something. So I started looking at doing pitch viz and previs and so on. So I was using Unreal to do previs, and I remember doing some previs in Unreal. I'm like, this don't look like previs. This looks kind of cinematic, and I'm getting ray tracing for free. Like, what's going on? So a comic book company called TPub reached out to me via LinkedIn. This is another thing I want to advise everyone: be on LinkedIn, share your work on LinkedIn. People will find you on LinkedIn. Believe me. So this company reached out to me and said, hey, look, we're a fan of the Beyond. We love your work. We love your style. Would you like to come out for coffee? We'd love to meet. So I went to meet them for coffee and so on. And they said, well, we want to do a proof of concept. Here's some money. And they wanted to do it live action. Big giant robots are live action. I'm like, there's no frigging way we're going to be able to do Pacific Rim for that money. Like, it's just insane. And so I went back thinking, it's got to be a way, because I really like the comic book. So I was thinking, well, why don't we do it all in animation? So I went back to say, hey, why don't we do an animation? They're like, whoa, animation is too expensive. You need a big studio. You need a big resources. It's a lot of work. I'm like, no, we could do it in real-time games. They're like, really? It's like a video game. I'm like, not really. There's a lot you can do. So what I did was I did a quick test for them, right? I did a test, released it, and they loved the test. So January this year, we went into production on Battlesuits. Now we only had 4 months. There's 3 people involved, myself, Ronan Aitan, who's our technical director, who did all of the pipeline, Unreal shading, all of the animation pipeline. We had Andrea, who's worked with me on all of my films. He came on board because he loved CG, but he also wanted to play in Unreal, right? And we got together and we started putting together this thing called Battlesuits. In fact, why don't Edwin play the trailer so you get to see what I'm talking about? And then I'm going to show you how I put that together in Unreal. They're doing that.
I could spend my entire career analyzing just one planet, looking at one species, without ever knowing for sure if I got their history right.
All right, so cool. So that's Battlesuits, and so that was the teaser for it. It came out about 2 weeks ago. I think it's getting a lot of press at the moment. A lot of people are talking about it. Now, here's the thing. The reason it's getting a lot of press isn't the fact that it's made in Unreal and it's cool and all of that stuff, which is good. But what's more important is the fact that it's final pixels, okay? Now, what I mean from final pixel is there was no compositing done on this at all. No compositing. Everything you see out there is directly out of Unreal. Now, you can imagine me coming from compositing. I felt like I'm going to the dark side here, man. Like, I should be comping, but I did no compositing. So everything was done in Unreal. Now, this was a game changer for me because, and also for the people involved, because we're so used to working on animated shows where everything is separated. You make a change, you got to go back and make those changes. Everything was in real time. And here's the thing, everything was running in GPU. So, and this is all done on a laptop. You know, I'll show you. Look, so here's some like behind the scenes. I'll just show you here. Let's see some shots. Here you go. So this is me working on it. This is basically, that was how the whole film was put together in Unreal on a laptop, okay? And what we did was, the first thing we did was we built a bunch of assets. We purchased a lot of assets and built on top of those assets. So we're all familiar with something called kit bash. So kit bash is the process where you take a base model and you build on top of that, kind of like clay. I love that process, right? And now bear in mind, I'm a hands-on director. So what we did was, first thing we did was we couldn't afford motion capture. So we bought a lot of motion capture libraries. And the next one we did, this is Ronan Aitan, who's this genius technical director I work with, and he's working with me now on another project. He came up with a system that allowed us to capture the face via an iPad and feed that onto the actors' faces and somehow synchronize it with the body. Some really clever thing. And again, using just the iPad, the live link, which exists already inside Unreal. So we're doing a lot of that. So you can see here. So you can see, I'm going to show you here. Here we go. So you see that little, this is the early test we're doing in his office back like in early January, where we're looking at moving the head around. You can see here, moving the head around and stuff. You can see it. And then what we did was we started to use something called blueprints. And now this, again, I was completely new to Unreal. I've only been using Unreal for like 3 or 4 months doing previs. So this is a project we were learning, right? But the cool thing is, everything's in real time. So any ideas I had, I was trying it out in real time. And if it worked, great. Save that, capture it, done. So there you go. And here's the actress. So one of the things we did, which was very special, which we worked with Epic on. So Epic has got a lab in London called Epic Lab. And they invited me and my team over to, hey, use our lab. We'll see if we can help you. And I wanted, because we had very little money, like we always do, on these projects, the actors, we can only, like this actress here, her name's Kosha Engler. Now, she's a really well-respected actress in game cinematics. So she's worked on like Terminator Resistance, Star Wars Battlefront. And so, you can only afford like 3 or 4 hours of her time. So I'm like, well, I need to record her voice and capture her face. So traditionally, you would have a witness camera, right? And you record the witness camera and you do the voice, and then the animators would go and try and make it work. I didn't have that luxury. So what we did was we used Ronan's technique of the iPad, which you can see here. We had another iPad which was capturing her footage for reference witness camera, but the other iPad had the character we already built. So she can see as she's acting what the character's doing. She can also see how far she needs to push her performance. But what was even cool was we were doing all of that while I was on the laptop in the scene. So I had the scene open, see her acting. I could direct her like I was on a virtual set, except this was all in animation. Game changer, massively. And this is the thing. This is not The Mandalorian. This is just a couple of guys with Unreal Engine and an iPad and a laptop and a lot of coffee, right? So we were able to pull that off. And then, so you can see here, we're doing shots like this where there's a lot of geometry we've thrown in there. So one of the things we had to do, even as a filmmaker, I had to change my mindset. When you're working in Unreal, it's not like your typical visual effects shot where you're working what the camera is seeing. You have a full 360 world. You have an environment. You put a light here, it's also going to affect the lighting everywhere here. So you had to train your head a little bit to be a bit more optimized. So you got to optimize your scene use things like lightbox bound maps, and really even the way, like you can see here, there's a sequence. Let me see here, show you here. There's lots of keyframes here. So my cameras, it's not like each Unreal file is a shot like Maya. No, you have a level, right? So you have a map. Your map is your world you build. So I built 3 worlds in Battlesuit. We had the war zone, we had the desert, and we had inside the mech suit, right? And then in that world, I have my cameras. My cameras are the shots. So in a way, I had little mini edits in Unreal Engine. That's very different to the way filmmakers work. But once you adapt it and embrace it, it's amazing. So this gives you an idea. Now, what I wanted to do, you can see here, there's loads of really, really cool shots. So like, look at this, particles, man. Particles, volumetric smoke. It's all real time on my computer. This is freaking amazing. I can direct it like I'm directing a real thing. Even the title sequence. The title sequence, traditionally you do in After Effects, okay? We did the title sequence in Unreal. And it's amazing what you can do. Now, the only thing we didn't do in Unreal was the color grade and the editing, which is fine because we're not manipulating imagery as far. We're just doing color correction. But even that workflow, we try to keep it traditional because, as we all know, making films is all through the editorial, okay? So, and even like recording the dialogue, the voice acting, I mean, it's just phenomenal. So what we did was Andrea used something called 3D Studio Max, and we built our robot asset, and we have this thing called Datasmith. Datasmith is like, imagine it as a bridge between my 3D Studio Max, Blender, well, Blender's part of Unreal now, or any other software, piping into it. So instead of exporting FBX, Alembic, we were piping it directly into Unreal. It was doing a translation of the geometry, the shaders, and all of that. So you can imagine it's very, very fast to work. So my artists can use whatever they want, my artists. As long as you use it through Datasmith, it works fine. Now, one of the things we had, which I'm going to show you, is I wanted to do some crazy camera moves. You know, I love movies like Black Hawk Down. I love movies like Saving Private Ryan. And there's a sequence in the film where it's a war zone where the guy is running, which you saw in the clip. And I wanted to have a handheld feel. Now, I remember back in the day, you'd put a camera shake and it's done. I don't think that looks as real. Like, I wanted to feel like I was in a war zone. So I knew it would be too many keyframes for me to do this properly. So a company called Glassbox Technology, a lovely lady called Philippa Carroll, who used to work at the Foundry, reached out to me and said, hey, I see you're playing with Unreal and you should look at some of the virtual production cameras. I'm like, dude, we don't have the money. It's too expensive. It's not Mandalorian, you know. And they go, no, you just need an iPad. I'm like, really? Yeah. So what they did was we got the iPad. I bought some Amazon Game Vice controllers, like £40 something. You put them on the side, and now I'll show you. So now if I show you this is me using this iPad Dragonfly technology. I felt like James Cameron, man. I felt like I was making friggin' Avatar. And it was amazing. I was able to move the camera around. Now, how that works is basically I have my Unreal scene. I have all my shots set up. My animations are set up, but my camera's not set up. I have a camera just loose in the world, right? I have all of, just imagine you're choreographing. So you treat it like a real set. So all my animation of the guy running, the explosions, all of that is timed already. I press play, it's on loop, and I move my camera finding the shots like you would if you're like a camera guy in an action scene finding it. And I'll just have it on loop, do as many takes. Now these takes are not footage, it's data, which means when I do my first take, if I felt the camera was too shaky, I can smooth the curves. I can move things around. Now that's a game changer because now every shot I take, I know I don't have to go and redo it. I can just manipulate it. It's a 3D world. And that just opened the world massively for me. Like just huge, just the way I was able to do all of these shots, and just really feel like I can change the lens, the focal length. I can, do depth of field. I can do all of that. And this is an iPad I already had. This is a Game Vice controller joystick, which you can buy on Amazon for £40. And it's using my laptop with LiveLink and a wireless connection. And I felt like I was doing a poor man's version of Mandalorian. But the point is, anyone can have this tool. This is not a specialized tool. You can go to Dragonfly and download a demo of their tool, get your iPad and start shooting stuff. Now, this is exciting for me because it means that you're going to see a lot of filmmakers now out there that are thinking, hey, this idea I had for an animation, I could actually do this. So I advise everyone, whether you use Unity, whether you use Unreal, it doesn't matter what you use. You know, they're both just as good. Everyone's got their own preference. They both do the same thing, okay? Try and play virtual cameras. You know, I know Unity has a thing you can pipe with your phone. So, you know, you don't need an iPad. Use your phone to do this. But the more you feel like you're shooting, the more you start to feel like you're directing. Now, for me, like I told you last year, it was a bit of a dead year for me. I wasn't on set. So this was me like, I'm back to making films. I feel like I'm making a movie. I feel like I'm on set. You still need to work with actors. You still need to have the same principles of cinematography, filmmaking, shot composition. All of that is still the same, except now you're dealing with real-time CGI. It's a game changer. That project actually landed me an animated feature film, which I am currently on. I mean, I can't tell you what the film is because it's NDA'd, embargoed, but what I can say, it's based on a video game IP. And the producers saw Battlesuit and asked me to pitch on it. And I pitched the idea of doing it all in Unreal, and I had something to prove I could do it. But now we're doing it on a much bigger scale. It's a feature. So yeah, you know, I think my decision last year when there wasn't much work to learn a new tool has paid off. Now I'm making an animated feature. So you all can do this. Never stop learning new technology because it always leads to something. It makes your career even more attractive. There you go.
You seem to be making all the right moves, you know, from Kronos, doing the other films and all that stuff. So you seem to know where exactly to go. So is this something that is a hunch for you, or how do you get this hunches or this you know, thinking of I think do this? It's amazing.
Well, it's top secret. No, you know, a lot of it is your gut feeling, but a lot of it is, I have to be very honest, is listen to people. So I've got a bunch of people I talk, my agents in Los Angeles, my managers in Los Angeles, but even like my friends, my close friends would say, Haz, like, your last film was good, but you need to step it up. You need to do something a bit more groundbreaking. Still keep your voice, but do something groundbreaking. And I always, whenever I'm in that position, I'm like, I go back to what worked and what doesn't work. Be a self-critic. I'm a very hard self-critic on myself. And if you are a self-critic and you accept, okay, you look, every film you make is never perfect. You talk to any filmmaker, they'll tell you it's never perfect. What you can do as a filmmaker is learn from those things. I made a million mistakes making The Beyond. When working on the Disney show, it was my first television show as a director, directing a pilot for Disney, which is a big, massive company. You learn, you make mistakes, you learn. So for me, like, you know, going to animation, I'm like, I want to do animation. My ideas are too big to do live action. I could try and get it made for live action. I could spend 2 years knocking on every studio and said, hey, I want to make this big giant robot movie. And they'll probably say, yeah, sure, we'll put it through development. Or I could find another way of doing it. And my way was, let's try Unreal Engine. Hey, look, Battlesuit could have been a complete failure, you know, but you don't know until you try. And that's the whole idea with technology, being affordable, being accessible. You know, no one told me to learn. I didn't do a course on Unreal, by the way. I went on YouTube and just like Googled, how do you move a camera? How do you use sequencer? And there was a huge community, both Unreal and Unity, have a huge community of artists. And today, people are much more open. There's a Facebook group called Real-Time Filmmaking. There's a Facebook group called Virtual Production. There's people there that will share their knowledge with you. You're not alone. Now, you know, learning technique, shaping your career, you don't have to do it on your own. You can do it with people supporting you.
That's excellent, man. Really appreciate that. Okay, we have a question by Sumita Chowdhury. Please suggest a few authors whose books can help in understanding the visual effects.
Oh, wow. That's a tricky one. I mean, I think Steve Wright, I think, yeah, the guy, he's like, I think, yeah, I've got his book on my shelf there, even though I'm not in visual effects anymore.
I think I have his book here as well, or maybe it's in the office.
You have to read that book because it's the fundamentals of color science. It's the fundamentals of
reference book,
lenses, you know, color space. Having that understanding will make your life in visual effects so much more easier. You know, when someone says, look at the curve, look at your gamma curve, you need to understand what's going on. You don't need to like know the physics behind it, but understand a little bit about the science will inform you as a visual effects artist why something isn't working. You know, why your white levels are clipping all the time. They look fine on one monitor, but on this one, they don't look right. We've all done that before, right? A lot of it is having that science. So read the Steve Wright book, but also like, you know, it's not just books you need to read. You know, there's a lot of things. There's like FX PhD. There's even your course, Hassin. You know, there's a lot. There's a lot of things out there that you can look at. You know, like Digital Gnomon is one of them. Gnomon School. You know, there's all sorts of places you can look at for. There isn't like the one book that's gonna make you the best artist, but having the fundamentals, thing like Steve Wright's book, will come in very, very handy. That's one thing I would say. If you're in visual effects, whether you're a compositor, whether you are a 3D artist, it doesn't matter. Read that book, because color affects textures, affects shading, affects lighting, affects compositing, right?
Yeah.
So have an understanding of that. It will go a long way. I find myself a lot of time when I talk to cinematographers, like when I was doing Fast Lane in Vancouver, the cinematographer, Neil Servin, amazing cinematographer, he's very, very color science oriented. I remember the reference in the book. I'm like, just reference that one more time. Oh, okay, I get it. The histogram, got it. So yeah, you'll never stop referencing those books. Yeah.
I think it's a good time to talk about your Film 101 courses that you have online. Would you mind sharing it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Eddie, if you bring up the screen. But basically, I put that course together for one reason only, because I felt like I was getting too many questions. People emailing me, people on Facebook, how did you make your film for so little money? It looks so big. How did you get marketing done? And I always said to myself that, I'm not really a teacher, that's, you guys are good at that. But I felt like if I was going to do a course, I wanted to do a course based on my experiences of making films. I didn't want to do a course on theoreticals. For me, I wanted to do a course that shared my successes and what I did, but also my failures, all the pitfalls I fell in, and how I found solutions. And the way I did it was, you're not going to see me talking to the camera at all. This is a course where it's all behind the scenes footage. You're going to get a glimpse of what it's like to be on the set of my films. You're going to see moments where I totally screwed up, but how I fixed things. But most importantly, I'm not teaching people how to do visual effects on this course, because you have visual effects courses for that. You have amazing courses. I'm not teaching people how to be a cinematographer, but what I am teaching people is how to be a director, to use visual effects smartly. How do you work with a cinematographer? How do you work with your first AD? How do you take your script, break it down, plan it, and right through to post? How do you deal with post? How do you deal with the pressure? What are some of the tools and solutions you can do to give in notes? How do you give notes? There's different ways of giving notes. What are the best ways of notes? And right through to the most important thing, which I find people forget, is there's making the film, and then there is releasing the film. Many people forget that marketing is a huge thing. People forget that you have to market your film. Why spend 2 years making a film, but you're not going to get people to watch it? So you need to market your film. How do you sell a film? Another thing I learned on the Beyond was paperwork. I couldn't believe how much paperwork there was in making a film. Release forms, confidential agreements, contracts, legal, licenses, stock footage licenses, everything you got to cover. So I put that in there, showing example of those paperwork, which I felt when I was looking for filmmaking classes back in the day, I couldn't find that. So I'm hoping something like this will inspire people, but also you get to see a glimpse of what that's like, and it will, kind of like give you an idea of what it's like making a film. But most importantly, it's very affordable. This is not like a big, massive, like masterclass. And I did that recently. I cut the prices massively because we're in COVID-19 at the moment, and I think it's important that people just can afford to, for the price of a beer or something, you can just like learn how to make a movie. So yeah, appreciate that, man. Thanks for cutting down the price. All right, do we have any more questions, Edwin? Maybe a couple of last questions, and before we go, it's do we have any more questions on Edwin's side? It's a question here by Dash. Dash is asking, when are we going to start shooting movies in space? I know Elon Musk and Tom Cruise are working on it already, but when? I think the answer to that is when putting someone in a rocket and launch him to space is going to cost less than $1 billion. That's when we start doing it. Tom Cruise, Elon Musk can afford to do that. But
can afford, yeah.
take a while. Yeah. You know, look, here's the thing, dude. Everything is cost prohibitive. When you're making a movie, you know, there is the creative and there is how much money you have. It's a business. You know, that's, you know, if we're going to end this webinar, I like to end this webinar with understanding that visual effects, filmmaking, making music, anything creative, it's a business. Now, your job is to make it as fun and creative, but don't forget, in order for you to keep making art, you've got to have a business mind to it. Have basic business. Understand that it's a commerce. If you can do that, you'll go very far. You'll continue having a career.
That is very important. I guess that's it. Edwin, would you like to come back into the chat so we can finish the whole thing? Thank you very much. Has, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And the effort you've been putting into this for the last couple of weeks with Edwin to talk to the students here. And even myself, it was nice catching up with you. And I hope to really work with you in the future as well. I mean,
absolutely.
I know you've been working with a lot of other stuff as well. And please do update us from time to time if you're, you know, if any project that you want, we can help you with or something like that. Edwin, all yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, both of you, especially Has. That was an inspiring session, right from 5 years back when we were actually using the Osmo camera to run around. Yeah. So you remember the Osmo camera that Hussein used to carry and then run around from the third floor to the fourth floor.
Yes.
From there, now you're holding
virtual
camera. Okay, so in 5 years time, just 5 years time. Okay, so thank you for all the sharing. I think we were actually planning for a 1 hour session. Now it's more than 1.5 hours. But actually, there's quite a lot to know from you. I mean, this is not enough. I think 1.5 hours time is very a small time for us to actually extract all the knowledge from you. But definitely a thought-provoking session. Thank you for sharing all the knowledge. And I believe for the students as well who have joined us today, they would have got a real idea of how to get things done with limited resources.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's exactly one. I think for me, it's a takeaway how you can work even inside 4 walls to get a movie done. So that's what exactly you have.
But you know, I mean, definitely, you know, you have my social media, Instagram, Twitter, because what I do is every day I'm posting behind the scenes. One of the things I love doing, I love to share behind the scene moments, you know, obviously to a certain level where I'm not breaking contracts and NDAs, but I like to share the process. So if anyone's interested more about the Unreal Engine side and what I've been doing, there's a lot of stuff on my Instagram and Twitter that I post like every day just to show people some test sequences and hopefully, and you can reach out to me as well via Instagram. So it's all good.
So the Instagram handle is there on your screen for you to note, and to please feel free to bug Has. He'll be very happy to actually respond to your questions. I believe we were not able to share a few of the questions because some of the questions were like repeated, and to the ends, that's the reason we did not share. But I want to end this session with one of the comments from your fan following and one of the person who got inspired by you. So there you go. I hope you recognize.
Hey, Monica. Hey, that's awesome. Oh, wow.
So she wants to wish you congrats for your recent achievements. And so she's there watching. So likewise, all the students are also watching your session, the one that worked during 2015.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, yeah, I follow a lot already on social media. So it's very cool to see them grow as well. Like, it's very cool.
So again, thank you very much. And Hussein Khan, wonderful for being hosting this session for us and then eliciting all the answers from us. Thank you very much. And I believe when I actually played the show reel of us, the audio was not playing. So I would play it towards the end of when we close the session. Yeah, the sound was not there, so I would play it for you. On that note, thank you very much again. We would meet again for a next webinar session. I've left behind the feedback form for you to fill in. Please do ensure that you fill in so that you can get your e-certificates of participation. So I've left it there. So on that note, thank you very much all again, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
I said stay live.
This is life.
And this unprecedented mix of human consciousness and technology.
I would suggest that this is the beginning of the future of astronauts to come.
I see it! Excuse me, Jack! Over there, go! Coming through! On your left!